for the full decisive review of the Seka Spear. Here is what it is like to ride. If you are new to this channel, here's how these reviews work from me. I've done lots of other bikes before that I've got a playlist linked on screen now, and I have 10 different categories. You can find them all in the chapters below that I will be comparing each bike to, so you can find out what's good and what's bad compared to what. Let's get into the review. I do have a full build video on this bike, guys, so if you want to see the components I've built it up with, how much it weighs, any faffy bits and stuff like that, then you can check it out on that video there. Handling. I'm really enjoying the handling on this bike. The initial tip-in is very nice. It's fast, but it doesn't throw you in. It's just a fast turning speed when you initially enter the turn. With that fast turning speed, it also means when you're going through like a chicane, like a left after a right, the bike really easily doesn't throw itself, but it really easily sits onto the other side. So, you know, say for example, you're going through a left-hand turn and all of a sudden you want to turn right, boom, it semi-throws itself over, but it catches itself in a really nice position. It doesn't overthrow you, it doesn't feel like you're throwing too far. So yeah, side to side, quick turns, very nice on this thing. When you're going around the bends on this bike, super stable, doesn't get destabilized by anything, really stable as it goes round. And if you do see a pothole or some gravel in the middle of the road, it doesn't mind coming off of its line and back onto the line again. So you just have those options and agility whilst you're in the corner on the bike. So you can come off the line and then sit back in the carve again really easily. Very specialized and factor in that sense. One area where I'm going to mark it down in the handling a little bit is how the bike likes to lean. So for this bike, when you're leaning it over, it kind of feels like you're turning a dial, but the dial gets more resistive the further over you are. So once you hit a certain point, it almost doesn't want to lean any further. It kind of feels like it restricts the bike just a little bit, whereas a Specialized and a Pinarello, very light all the way through the lean. So in one way, it's quite good to have that feedback, that kind of like dial resistive feedback that kind of fights you a little bit the further over you get. But I think for me, I kind of prefer like the Specialized Pinarello, where just the turning action just stays light all the way through the lean. I've personally found this bike very easy to ride with no hands. So if you're looking at taking a jacket off, things like that, grabbing some food, eating some gels, whatever, it's quite easy to do so. Every bike's a little bit different, but I found this one quite easy to pick up the no hands kind of thing on it. The comfort on this bike, I'm gonna have to say David Arthur was correct. The back end is actually very good. I think that wind eye is doing the work very, very well. I'm finding that it's absorbing most of the bumps. There's no harshness coming through the back end. It smooths out most of the road, even those like rough surfaces that we get here. Big bumps doesn't destabilize it. The front end, not quite as good. It's firmer. It's not bone shaking, it's not aggressive, it's not uncomfortable, but it's definitely a lot firmer. You can feel more coming through the front end there. I will say I've done quite a few long rides on this now. I think the longest is 160. I've done 4 rides over 120k now, and to be honest, you can spend all day on this thing like quite comfortably. It's not an uncomfortable bike at all. I just think that front end kind of lowers the score a little bit for me. Doesn't quite perform as well as I'd want it to. So yeah, if you really wanted to do a very long ride like the Mallorca 312 on this thing, well, it will happily handle it. And I think if they manage to fix that front end, it would definitely get it up to that classic like 9 out of 10 that most bikes are hitting nowadays, but it's more than acceptable enough. Now, I don't know if this would help with the comfort and the aero. I'd probably need a bit more of an engineer to suggest if it would or not. But I think they could have hourglassed this a little bit more. And if they hourglassed it, I'd imagine it would allow a bit more flex for the two sides of the head tube to bend in. It's just very bolt upright on either side. And also I think if you hourglassed it a little bit, it might be a little bit more aerodynamic because you just have less area on the front here. Like I said, I'm not an engineer or anything. I don't know if that's feasible on this bike or not, but they're just my thoughts. Let's go over speed on the flats and the rolling. And this bike does as good as any other bike I've ever ridden. When I compare to how fast it feels, when I compare to a Specialized, a Trek, a Pinarello, a Factor, it kind of feels the same. You know, it's just really happy building up to speed. It's really happy holding speed. If you're kind of in that chain gang, like You don't feel like the bike hinders you at all at those high-end speeds. I think the only place I can pick a weakness is when you compare it to like the proper Jeep aero bikes, like a Cervelo S5 or something. Not that I've ridden that one. The only place where I can pick apart its kind of weaknesses is maybe at those really high speeds, the bike just doesn't sail. I think to get like a full 10 out of 10 on this score, it has to feel like a time trial bike when you're on it. This bike doesn't feel like that. So it's only going to score a 9 out of 10. Once again, that puts it in practically the same category as everything at the top of the range on my list. To be honest, I think that wind eye, the way that it's catching the wind and stuff, and probably smoothing it out and help it flow around the back tyre, I think it works, to be honest. I think it's probably doing its job. Well, climbing on the bike, climbing is actually very good. I mean, when you're in the saddle, it kind of acts like most modern bikes do nowadays, where you just feel like you're just on top of the gear and it's easy to settle into a rhythm. I feel like I said that a lot in my bike reviews recently. But because the bike is so happily and readily tipped over from side to side, I'm finding it really easy just to be out the saddle for long periods of time. And sometimes I quite like to ride like that. You know, it's your own personal preference, but because of that tipping sensation and how kind of sharp and energetic it feels, it doesn't feel like I'm using any more energy out the saddle as I do when I'm in the saddle. So, for me, climbing is excellent. Sprinting, let's get on to that. This is one of those areas where the bike forms admirably, I must say. It's a lot of fun to sprint on, and it has a lot of snap. So I've kind of come to the conclusion that the snap kind of sharp sensation, a speedy, maybe energetic sensation, a lot of that is actually down to the frame flexing and snapping back against you, kind of giving you this really like fast, like whip, fun sensation on the back of the bike. And this bike has it. A dead frame would flex and then not whip back, and sometimes a frame can be too stiff, making it feel a little bit dull on the sprint. It doesn't flex and snap back against you. But no, this is kind of right in that sweet spot. I will say though, when you're starting to get over 1400 watts, this is where the bike starts to struggle a little bit. I'm not getting as much snap back, and it's starting to feel particularly dead, kind of over 1600 watts. Now, this is going to depend on obviously how big you are. As I said in the sidewind section, I'm 90 kilos. I'm a fairly big dude, so those numbers are somewhat achievable for me. If you're a smaller rider, probably not going to affect you as much. I wonder if part of that is down to the skinniness of the frame. As I said, it's a very, very skinny frame. So maybe actually a little bit of width might improve the sprinting at those really high numbers on this bike. But yeah, if you're a smaller rider, sub 1400 watts, I think you're going to be okay.
I have actually docked the bike another point because it does do what specialised bikes do, and that is the rear wheel likes to lift a little bit when you're at a higher power, just making it a little bit harder to keep the power down. Just requires that little bit more skill.
As you can probably tell by my hair at the moment, it's windy. I'm in Mallorca and it's always windy. This bike, because it's so skinny, to be honest, I think it's absolutely excellent for the wind. I mean, there's just not much for it to push against. It's genuinely one of the skinniest bikes I've ever seen. I think it is the skinniest bike I've ever seen. So yeah, from a sidewind perspective, I just don't feel them on here. I always need to put this caveat in here, guys. I weigh 90 kilos. I'm a lot heavier than most people, so I'm going to feel the wind less naturally anyway. But when I do compare this bike to other bikes, I still think it performs much better. I think the first thing about the shop window factor about this bike is that it is very, very skinny. I mean, it's like a 2000s supermodel kind of skinny. I mean, it's absolutely thin. This and the Factor and the SLA, definitely the winners on steep post thinness, but the rest of the bike, even the top tube, it's very thin coming down here. It's a skinny bike. For me, it's going to score an 8 out of 10. Two reasons: it doesn't have the super deep, cool like aero tubes, and the second reason is, well, it's still a China bike, unfortunately. You can't change that, but I think the bike looks absolutely wicked. It comes in lots of good paint jobs, even though I've got a custom one. And I don't know, it just seems to catch people's eye. Everyone seems to have a look at it as you ride past. So I still think it's a really, really cool looking bike. And I do find myself looking at myself in the shop windows as I ride past on it still. Is it a fun bike to ride? And the answer is yes. To be honest, this one absolutely maxes out the fun factor. Everywhere you go on it, the climbs, the flats, the rolling, whatever, you know, it's just an exciting bike to ride. It just responds really well. It's fun, it's energetic, it's snappy, it's like a little puppy. You know, it's got lots of character in that sense. So yeah, 10 out of 10 on the fun factor. I haven't had a bad time on this bike yet, and I've had a few crap days here in the rain, and even they were good rides.
And then we get on to the final scores here, guys, and you can see it actually does really, really well. Of course, that cost to value ratio, bringing it up really, really nicely on this score sheet. It doesn't quite get a 10 out of 10 for that, just because for a China bike, it is still fairly expensive at £2,600. Then if we exclude the price, you can see that it kind of sits here, well, it's only at the top because it is in alphabetical order, but really it seems to sit kind of like middle of the pack, like generally sits alongside most other top end bikes. So yeah, the bike isn't totally perfect, but the things that it doesn't do very well, it still does them to a good enough standard to hold its own against some really good bikes.
Well, to conclude, guys, I think that this bike is, well, it's a fantastic all-rounder. It does sit in that category of bikes that like to do it all. You know, Trek Madone Gen 8, Specialized SL8, and I think for a lot of bikes out there, it really does match that level of quality. Does it quite reach the SL8? No, in my opinion, it doesn't. But if you want a bike that looks different, that feels a bit different, that kind of gather some attention, and well, quite frankly, is a much better price than what you'll pay for most other bikes out there, then look no further. Guys, if you have any questions that you think I've missed about the bike, feel free to chuck them in the comments down below. If it's about the bike, I'll reply to pretty much everything. Or of course, you can find me over here on screen now on my Instagram, and you can message me privately there, or just follow my daily shenanigans. Anyway, guys, I've been Jason. This has been a Cycling Unboxed Seka Spear review. I'll catch you in the next video.